The billionaire's mother had paid his new wife $50,000 to leave him after 30 days. What she didn't know was that by the time those 30 days ended, the woman she had hired to break her son's heart had already fallen completely in love with him. But 3 months before any of that happened, Amara Chukwu was standing in a queue at Zenith Bank in Victoria Island, arguing with a loan officer who kept repeating the word collateral like it was the only word he knew. "Ma, I have explained. My mother's hospital bill is not something that can wait for your processing time," Amara said, her voice low so the other customers wouldn't hear her business. She was 26, dressed in a blazer she'd ironed twice to hide the fact that it was the only one she owned, and she had exactly 412 naira in her account.
Amara had nothing. She had a diploma in business administration, a mother recovering from a stroke in a general ward because the family couldn't afford a private room, a younger brother who needed school fees, and a stubborn refusal to cry in public. She left the bank with her dignity intact and her problem completely unsolved, which, if you asked her, was not a fair trade. She was still fuming about it 3 days later when her Aunt Ngozi called her with what she described as an opportunity from God himself. "God doesn't usually walk through your friend Evelyn," Amara said, stirring beans on a single gas burner in her one-room apartment in Aja. "Just meet her. What is the harm in meeting?" The harm, Amara would later think, was enormous. But she didn't know that yet.
Evelyn Okonjo-Bello did not look like a woman who needed to scheme for anything. She had the kind of poise that came from 4 decades of being the most important person in every room she entered. Silk head wrap, a Range Rover idling outside with a driver who never turned off the engine, and reading glasses she wore on a gold chain purely for effect, since Amara noticed she never actually put them on. They met at a quiet cafe in Lekki, the kind with soft jazz playing and prices that made Amara's stomach hurt just looking at the menu. "I'll get straight to it," Evelyn said, sliding into her seat without so much as a greeting. "My son is getting married. I need a wife for him." Amara blinked. "I'm sorry. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not in the business of." $50,000, Evelyn said, and the cafe's soft jazz seemed to go quiet on cue, though it was probably just Amara's ears ringing.
"I beg your pardon. You heard me correctly." Evelyn folded her hands on the table, calm as a woman discussing the weather. "My son, Daniel, is 32 years old, and he has decided he wants to get married before the year ends. Every woman who has ever come close to him has been after his money. I have watched it happen 4 times. I am done watching. With respect, Ma, I still don't understand what this has to do with me. I want you to marry him." Amara actually laughed, a short, disbelieving back of a laugh. "Marry a man I've never met? You'll meet him. He'll believe it's real. He'll believe he chose you." Evelyn's eyes didn't blink. "You marry him, you make him believe fully that you love him. You stay 30 days, then you leave. Quietly. No scandal. No public embarrassment. You keep the $50,000 and you disappear from his life."
And what exactly does this prove? That my son is right to trust no one. Evelyn said it so simply, so matter-of-factly, that for a second, Amara forgot to be horrified. If a woman who is being paid to fake love him can still convince him, then any woman can. I need him to see it. I need him to stop being so foolish about love before some clever girl actually succeeds in taking half of everything his father and I built. Amara sat back in her chair. Outside the cafe window, Lagos has inched along in the golden afternoon heat, horns blaring, hawkers waving between cars, selling groundnuts and plantain chips, completely indifferent to the fact that a woman inside was being offered enough money to save her mother's life in exchange for breaking a stranger's heart. "This is insane," Amara said. "This is business," Evelyn corrected. "You have 30 days to decide if you want it to also be profitable."
Amara did not sleep that night. She sat by her mother's hospital bed, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest, listening to the machine beep in that steady, patient way machines have of reminding you that time is not on your side. "You look like you've seen a ghost," her mother, Ifeoma, whispered, eyes still closed. "I'm fine, Mama. You've never been a good liar, Amara, since you were small." Amara almost smiled. Almost. There's a woman. She wants to pay me to marry her son. That got Ifeoma's eyes open. Is this a Nollywood film? Since when do rich people advertise for wives like they're hiring house help? It's $50,000, Mama. The room went very quiet. $50,000 was not a number either of them had ever said out loud in relation to their own lives. It was a number that belonged to other people, people on television, people whose problems were entirely different from the problem of choosing between medication and rent.
What is the catch? Ifeoma asked slowly. Because there is always a catch. And after 58 years of life, she had learnt this the hard way. I marry him. I make him believe it's real. After 30 days, I leave. Ifeoma was silent for a long moment. Then, in the dry, no-nonsense tone that had raised Amara through every hardship of her childhood, she said, So this boy has money, but he does not have a mother who trusts him to run his own life? Amara laughed despite herself, a real one this time. Something like that. And you would do this, pretend to love a man? I don't know, Mama. Amara took her mother's hand, thin and warm in her own. But I know I can't watch you get worse in a public ward because I'm too proud to take strange money. Ifeoma studied her daughter's face for a long time. Then take the money, my daughter, but guard your heart. A woman can pretend with her mouth. It is much harder to pretend with her eyes. Amara didn't know yet how right her mother would turn out to be.
She met Daniel Okonjo-Bello for the first time 9 days later at a charity gala his family was hosting at the Echo Hotel. And it was, by every account she could later remember, a complete disaster. She arrived in a dress borrowed from her cousin, one size too big at the waist, cinched with a safety pin she prayed nobody would notice. She didn't know a single person in the ballroom full of Lagos's wealthiest families, so she did what any sensible woman would do. She found the food table and made a plan to survive the evening by eating as much free jollof rice as was socially acceptable, which, in her opinion, was quite a lot. She was mid-bite, balancing a plate in one hand and a glass of Chapman in the other, when a deep voice behind her said, "That's actually not the good jollof. The good jollof is in the back, by the kitchen entrance. This is just the one for show."
Amara turned around, still chewing, to find a tall man in an impeccably tailored navy suit, watching her with obvious amusement. He had the kind of face that photographed well from every angle. Sharp jaw, close-cropped beard, eyes that looked like they were permanently deciding whether to trust you, and the easy, unbothered posture of a man who had never once in his life worried about where his next meal was coming from. "And you would know this how?" she asked, refusing to be embarrassed. "Because it's my family's event, and I personally told the caterers to hide the good pot from the guests so there'd be enough left for the staff." Amara nearly choked on her rice. "That is the most Lagos billionaire thing I have ever heard." "I'm sorry?" "Nothing." She wiped her mouth, trying to recover some dignity. "So who are you, the Jollof inspector?"
Something like that. He smiled, and it was, annoyingly, a genuinely nice smile. Daniel. Amara's stomach dropped straight through the marble floor. Of course this was him. Of course, the one time she let her guard down enough to make a joke with a stranger. That stranger turned out to be the $50,000 problem she'd come here specifically to solve. "Amara," she managed, extending a hand that she hoped wasn't visibly shaking. "Amara," he repeated, like he was testing how the name felt in his mouth. "Well, Amara, since you clearly have better taste than half the people in this room," he nodded at her plate, "let me show you where the real jollof is hiding." She should have said no. She should have made an excuse and left the gala entirely, called Evelyn, told her the whole arrangement was off before it even started. Instead, she found herself following him toward the kitchen, laughing at something he said about his aunties always overcooking the goat meat at family functions, and thinking, with a small flicker of panic she quickly pushed down, that this was going to be a lot harder than $50,000 had made it sound.
By the time the gala ended, Daniel had Amara's number, 3 inside jokes about the auntie's overcooked goat meat, and absolutely no idea that the woman he'd spent 2 hours laughing with in a hotel kitchen had been sent there by his own mother. Amara, for her part, went home and sat on the edge of her narrow bed for a long time, staring at her phone, feeling like she'd swallowed a stone. This is fine, she told herself. This is a job. He is a client. Men do not fall for women over jollof rice. She was wrong, but she wouldn't find that out for a while. Daniel called 2 days later, then the day after that. Then it became a habit neither of them named out loud. A 10-minute call before bed that stretched into an hour, then 2. About nothing in particular. His mother's obsession with orchids, her brother's terrible taste in music, the specific way Lagos Danfo drivers seemed personally offended by the concept of traffic lights. I have a confession, Daniel said one night, about 2 weeks in. Amara's whole body went still. This is it. He knows. Evelyn told him. It's over before it started. And Mama's hospital bill. I told my driver to slow down when we passed your junction last week. Daniel continued, completely oblivious to the small heart attack he just caused. Just so I could see if you were the one arguing with the akara seller. You were. You lost, by the way. Amara exhaled so hard she nearly dropped the phone. I did not lose. I got 2 extra akara for free, out of principle. That woman looked ready to chase you with the frying spoon. She respects a worthy opponent. Daniel laughed. A real laugh. Unguarded. The kind she was starting to notice he didn't give easily. You are ridiculous. You are stalking me. I prefer conducting due diligence. On what exactly? There was a pause on the line, just long enough to mean something. On whether you are real, Daniel said finally. Quieter now. Every woman I've dated in the last 5 years has had a very polished answer for everything. You argue with akara sellers over principle. It's, I don't know, refreshing. Amara stared at the water stain on her ceiling and felt something twist uncomfortably in her chest. Because he thought she was the real one. He thought she was the exception. And she was sitting there with 50,000 reasons why she absolutely, categorically was not. Daniel, she started, there's something. Marry me, he said. The words landed in the small room like something physical. I'm sorry. I know how that sounds. I know we've known each other 3 weeks. My mother is going to have a heart attack. My lawyers are going to draft me 40 pages of document, and half of Lagos society is going to say I've lost my mind. He said it fast, like he'd been rehearsing it and needed to get it all out before his own nerve failed him. But I've spent 5 years assuming every woman who smiled at me was doing the math on my father's company in her head. And you've never once asked me what I do, what I own, what car I drive. You argued with me about jollof rice within 4 minutes of meeting me. I don't want to wait 2 years pretending that's not rare. I want to marry you, Amara. Amara sat frozen, phone pressed hard against her ear, and thought about the contract folded in her drawer, thought about her mother's hospital bracelet, thought about the fact that the money she needed was about to be attached, permanently, irreversibly, to a proposal that felt terrifyingly real on his end and was technically exactly the plan on hers. She should have felt triumphant. The job was working. Evelyn would be thrilled.
Instead, she felt like she was about to cry, and she didn't fully understand why. Ask me again in person, she said, because it was the only sentence she could find that wasn't a lie and wasn't the whole truth either. He asked her again 3 days later, on one knee in the middle of his mother's orchid greenhouse, which Amara would later learn was the single most sentimental location Daniel Okonjo-Bello owned. The one place, he admitted, where his father used to take him as a boy, before the company swallowed the man whole and left behind only meetings and mergers. Evelyn watched from the greenhouse doorway, arms folded, satisfaction written all over her face. To her, this was a chess piece moving exactly where she'd placed it. She had no idea her son meant every word of it. Yes, Amara said, and hated herself a little for how much she meant it too. The wedding was small, by Okonjo-Bello standards, which still meant it was the biggest event Amara's family had ever attended in their lives. Her mother, discharged just in time and wheeled down the aisle in a chair decorated with white lilies,
cried through the entire ceremony. Her brother, Kelechi, kept whispering, "Our lives are about to change forever," like a prophecy, not understanding it would change in ways nobody in that room could have predicted. Evelyn sat in the front row in a cream lace jelly, smiling the smile of a woman who believed she already knew how the story ended. Daniel, standing at the altar in a black agbada his father used to wear, watched Amara walk toward him and felt something in his chest unclench for the first time in years.
Amara, walking down that aisle in a dress that actually fit her for once, looked at his face, open, hopeful, undefended, and thought with genuine horror, "I am going to destroy this man in 30 days, and he doesn't even know he should be afraid of me." She said "I do" anyway, because the bill was due at the end of the month, and love, she reminded herself firmly, was not going to pay it. She almost believed that too, for about 2 more weeks.
Married life, Amara quickly discovered, came with rules she hadn't been told about, like the fact that Daniel apparently could not sleep unless the TV was on low volume in the background, tuned to a nature documentary. Any nature documentary, it didn't matter which. "You're a grown man who runs a construction empire," she said on their third night, staring at a lion pride devouring a wildebeest at 2 a.m., "and you need David Attenborough to fall asleep." His voice is calming. "A lion is currently eating another animal alive." "Very calming," Daniel said, already half asleep, and Amara lay there in the dark, in a bed she wasn't supposed to get attached to, laughing so hard she had to bury her face in the pillow so he wouldn't wake up and ask what was funny.
That was the thing about the 30 days. Nobody had warned her they would be funny. Nobody had told her that a billionaire who owned 3 houses would still argue passionately about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. He was wrong, and she told him so repeatedly. Nobody had mentioned that he'd sulk, actually sulk, arms crossed, bottom lip out, when he lost at cards, or that he'd personally interrogate every driver about traffic routes, like Lagos owed him a personal apology for its potholes. By day 19, Amara had stopped counting down the days until she could leave. She had started, without meaning to, counting the days she had left.
"You are doing the thing again," her aunt Ngozi said over the phone, voice pitched low, even though Amara was alone in the walk-in closet, hiding from her own husband to take the call. "What thing?" "The thing where your voice goes soft when you say his name. I heard it. Daniel said this. Daniel thinks that. Amara, this was supposed to be business." "It is business," Amara said. But even to her own ears, it sounded like a woman trying to convince herself of something she no longer believed. 11 days, Ngozi reminded her. "Evelyn already texted me. She wants to know if you are prepared for the exit." Amara closed her eyes. 11 days. Somewhere in the last 3 weeks, that number had gone from a lifeline to something that felt uncomfortably close to a countdown to her own execution. "I'm prepared," she lied.
She wasn't prepared for what happened that Thursday. Daniel came home late, tie loosened, looking like a man who'd aged 5 years since breakfast. He didn't say anything at first, just sat on the edge of their bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "Bad day?" Amara asked, sitting beside him. "My father built this company from nothing," he said quietly. "Started with 1 truck and a loan he almost didn't pay back. And every single person who's come near it since, investors, partners, women, has wanted a piece without understanding what it cost him to build it." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Today a supplier tried to renegotiate a contract because he assumed, since I got married, I'd be distracted and less careful with numbers, like a wife is a weakness to be exploited." Amara felt something cold settle in her stomach, because she understood with painful clarity exactly what kind of weakness she currently was.
"Is that what you think marriage is?" she asked carefully. "A weakness?" Daniel looked at her, really looked, the way he did sometimes that made her feel like he was reading a language only he understood. "No," he said, "not with you. That's what scares me, honestly. I've spent so many years building walls that I don't fully know how to live without them.
and then you came along, arguing about akara and jollof rice, and He stopped, shook his head. I let the walls down, completely, for the first time in my adult life. Daniel, I need you to know something, he said, taking her hand in both of his voice low and steady. Whatever happens, whatever comes, you are the first person who's made me believe that trusting someone isn't automatically a mistake. I don't say that lightly. Amara sat there, his hands warm around hers, 11 days left on a contract folded in a drawer 3 feet away, and felt the full, terrible weight of what she'd agreed to.
She opened her mouth. She almost told him everything right there. The money, Evelyn, the 30 days, all of it. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Evelyn Okonjo-Bello, we need to talk. Tonight. Alone. It's about the arrangement, and I don't think you should tell him anything until we do. Amara stared at the screen, then at Daniel's face, still open and trusting in the lamplight, waiting for her to finish her sentence. You were saying? He asked softly. Amara swallowed. I'm glad I married you, Daniel. It wasn't a lie. That was the terrifying part. But it also wasn't the truth she'd almost told him, and as she slipped out of bed 20 minutes later, claiming a headache, to meet a woman who held both their futures in her manicured hands, Amara understood that the easy part of this arrangement was already over. The hard part, the lying, the choosing, the eventual reckoning, was only just beginning.
Evelyn was waiting in the orchid greenhouse when Amara arrived, arms folded, the same spot where Daniel had proposed. Amara almost laughed at the cruelty of that Evelyn would choose this exact place to remind her what she really was. You are stalling, Evelyn said, without greeting. Day 30 was supposed to be yesterday. I checked the calendar myself. I needed time to plan the exit properly. I didn't want to cause a scene. You didn't want to leave, Evelyn said, and it wasn't a question. I've watched you these past weeks, Amara. I know what love looks like on a woman's face. I've seen it ruin better plans than mine. Amara's chin lifted. Then maybe your test failed, Ma. Maybe you found exactly what you claimed you wanted. A woman who loves your son for himself. And you can't accept it because it means you are wrong.
For a moment, something flickered across Evelyn's composed face. Not quite doubt, but close to it. Then it hardened again. Or maybe you are a very good actress who's decided the real price is bigger than $50,000. Half of everything, perhaps, once you are truly his wife in every legal sense. That's not... I want you gone by the end of the week, Evelyn cut in. Take the money, leave quietly, or I show my son the signed agreement myself with your signature on it and let him decide which version of you is real. Amara left the greenhouse with her hands shaking and a decision she couldn't make.
She never got the chance to make it on her own terms. 3 days later, Daniel found the folder. He hadn't been looking for it. That was the detail that would haunt Amara most, the sheer randomness of it. He'd gone searching for his passport in the study's filing cabinet. The one drawer she'd forgotten was ever unlocked, and found instead a manila envelope with his mother's law firm's letterhead, his own wife's signature at the bottom of a document titled Confidential Agreement, and the number $50,000 typed in black and white beside the words 30 days. He read it standing up, then he read it again sitting down because his legs had stopped cooperating. When Amara came home that evening, arms full of plantain and pepper soup ingredients from the market, still laughing at something the taxi driver had said, she found Daniel sitting in the dark living room with the envelope on the table in front of him, and she knew, instantly and completely, that the easy part of her life was over.
Daniel, is this real? His voice was unevenly calm, which was worse than shouting would have been. Tell me this is not real. Amara set the market bags down slowly, her hands trembling. There was no version of this conversation where she could lie her way out. It's real. My mother paid you. He said each word like it cost him something. $50,000 to marry me, to make me believe you loved me, and to leave after 30 days. Yes. And today is day 33. Amara's eyes filled. Yes. Daniel stood up so fast his chest scraped hard against the floor. So what was this? A bonus round? Were you negotiating a better price while you were deciding whether to leave? His voice cracked on the last word, all that careful calm finally breaking apart. Was any of it real, Amara? The Akara cellar? The proposal? My father's greenhouse? Was I just a very well-funded performance?
At the beginning, yes, I accepted the money because I was desperate. My mother was dying in a public ward and I had nothing, Daniel, nothing. And your mother offered me a way out and I took it because I am human and I was drowning. Amara's voice shook but didn't break. But somewhere in those 30 days, it stopped being a performance. I don't know exactly when. Maybe the night you fell asleep to Lion documentaries. Maybe the day you told me trusting me was the bravest thing you'd ever done. I fell in love with you for real. And then I didn't know how to tell you the truth without losing you completely. So you decided the safer lie was to keep pretending. Daniel's laugh was hollow, humorless. Do you understand what this confirms for me? Everything I've ever believed about people wanting my money. You just proved it was true. You just proved my mother right. Your mother manufactured a lie to test a truth, and now she's using my honesty as a weapon against me. Amara's composure finally cracked. I am not asking you to trust the beginning, Daniel. I am asking you to look at the last 3 weeks and tell me that wasn't real. Look at me and tell me you don't believe I love you.
Daniel looked at her for a long, agonizing moment, and Amara watched something close behind his eyes, a door shutting that she wasn't sure could ever be opened again. I don't know what to believe anymore, he said quietly. And that's the worst thing you could have done to me. Amara nodded slowly, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Then she walked to the bedroom, packed a single bag, and set the manila envelope with the $50,000 check still folded inside, untouched, exactly as Evelyn had given it to her, on the hallway table on her way out. I accepted money to enter this marriage, she said at the door, not turning around because she couldn't bear to see his face and hold on to her resolve at the same time. I will not accept a single naira to stay in one where I'm not trusted. She left into the Lagos night, and Daniel let her go too, stunned and too proud to do anything but watch the door close.
Amara went back to Aja, back to the one-room apartment she'd almost forgotten she still owned, and cried until she had no tears left. Then she got up the next morning and did what she had always done before Daniel Okonjo-Bello ever walked into her life. She survived. She didn't touch the envelope. She never had. What Daniel didn't know, what he wouldn't find out for another 2 weeks and only by accident, was where the $50,000 had actually gone the moment Evelyn first handed it to her. Not into a new wardrobe, not into a car, not into the kind of lifestyle everyone assumed a woman like her had married up to enjoy. It had gone to Lagos University Teaching Hospital, clearing every outstanding bill on Ife Machuku's file, moving her out of the crowded general ward and into a room where she could finally rest. It had gone to Kelechi's school fees, 3 terms paid in full, plus the wake registration he'd been too embarrassed to ask his sister about. What remained, barely $11,000, had gone towards a small stall in Yaba that Amara had quietly started stocking with fabric and beads, the first real brick of the business she'd always dreamed of and never had the capital to build. She'd been paid to destroy a marriage. Instead, she'd spent the money keeping her family alive. Daniel found this out from Ngozi, of all people, his aunt-in-law that almost was, who called him 3 weeks after Amara left, furious on her niece's behalf, and told him exactly what kind of woman he'd let walk out of his house. She sat in that hospital corridor for 2 nights before your mother's offer, Daniel, Ngozi said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the phone line. She didn't buy herself so much as a new pair of shoes with that money, and you let her leave thinking you believed she was some kind of gold digger. Daniel sat with that for a long time after the call ended.
He went to his mother's house that same evening, still in his work clothes, the manila envelope in his hand. "You destroyed the only real thing I've ever had," he said, before Evelyn could even offer him a seat. "I was protecting you. You were proving a point," Daniel cut in. "And you are right, actually. That's what makes this so hard to forgive. You found a woman who could love me for exactly who I am. You just never trusted her enough, or me enough, to let her prove it honestly. You built a trap and called it a shield." Evelyn's composure, so carefully maintained for 30 years of running boardrooms and dinner tables alike, finally cracked. "I didn't want you hurt the way your father hurt me," she said quietly. "I loved a man who loved my money before he loved me. I swore it would never happen to you."
"So instead, you made sure I could never trust anyone who did love me," Daniel said. "Congratulations, Mother. Your test worked. I found her and I lost her. Because you taught me that love always comes with fine print." He left without waiting for a response. Because for the first time in his adult life, he wasn't looking for his mother's approval on the matter. He was looking for Amara. She wouldn't see him at first. 3 visits to the fabric stall in Yaba, 3 times turned away. Once by Amara herself, cold and composed behind a counter of Ankara prints. And twice by a very protective Ngozi, who informed him loudly in front of customers exactly what she thought of billionaires who confused love with ownership. He didn't send flowers. He didn't send money. Not 1 naira. Understanding finally that money was the very thing he needed to remove from every gesture he made toward her. He didn't hire lawyers or show up with grand declarations. He simply came back. Every week, sometimes just to sit on the low stool outside her stall and ask quietly how her mother was recovering. Sometimes to help carry stock from her supplier's van without being asked, saying nothing about it afterward. Once, he just stood in the rain outside her shutters after closing, waiting. Because she'd mentioned once, months ago, that her father used to do that for her mother when they were young and broke and had nothing but stubbornness between them. "You're wasting your time," Amara told him one evening, arms crossed, after he'd spent an hour rearranging her fabric shelves by color, without being asked, simply because he'd noticed it bothered her that they went. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe I'm finally learning the difference between testing someone and trusting them. I don't need 30 days to prove anything anymore, Amara. I just need you to see me showing up, over and over, with nothing to offer but myself. You hurt me. I know. You believed the worst of me the moment it was easiest to. I know that too. And I'm not asking you to forget it. I'm asking for the chance to be a different man than the one who did that." He looked at her, steady, no performance left in him at all. "I'm not here to buy my way back in. I don't have a check for this one. I just have time, and I intend to spend all of it proving I mean it." Amara didn't answer him that night, but she didn't tell him to stop coming either. It took 4 more months. 4 months of Daniel learning her stall's opening hours better than his own board meetings. 4 months of Sunday visits to her mother, who adored him despite everything, and who told Amara plainly, "That boy is not perfect, but he is trying, and trying is worth more than a man who never had to." 4 months before Amara finally let him walk her home instead of watching him drive away. They didn't get married again in front of 500 guests at the Eco Hotel. There was no orchid greenhouse, no manila envelope, no agreement folded in anyone's drawer. They stood instead in the small courtyard behind Amara's now thriving Yaba shop, Chukwu Textiles, the sign read, her name, not his, surrounded by her mother, her brother, Ngozi still muttering that she was watching Daniel closely, and Evelyn, invited this time not as an architect of a test, but as a mother finally letting to go. "No contracts," Daniel said, holding both her hands. "No tests, no 30 days. Just you and me deciding every single morning to choose each other again. And if I still argue with you about pineapple on pizza, then I suppose I'll have married the most stubborn woman in Lagos," Daniel said. and I wouldn't have it any other way. Amara laughed, the real one, unguarded, the one that had first made him fall for her over a plate of jollof rice. That wasn't even the good jollof. Money had brought them together as a lie. It was honesty, patience, and the slow, unglamorous work of earning trust back. One Sunday visit at a time that finally made it real. Love, Amara had learned, cannot survive where there is no trust. But sometimes, if both people are brave enough to stop testing each other and start choosing each other instead, it gets a second chance to grow properly the first time.